Welcome to Brevard News, your home for real news in Brevard County. My name is Kevin Jeffrey, your moderator, and I'm joined by the Commish, County Commissioner, District 1, Katie Delaney. Also joining us is our investigative reporter, Stale Bailey. Now that brings us to our quote for the week, and this is from Alexander Hamilton. And notice what he says. He says, "No legislative act contrary to the Constitution can be valid." And I know that there are people making laws all over this great country of ours. And do you realize most of those laws are unconstitutional? You say, well, but they're out there. If anyone ever pushed those acts to the United States Supreme Court, they'll be proven to be invalid. And that's what Hamilton is talking about here. And that brings us to Titusville. And as always, as Titusville turns, and there was a lot of turning going on this week, Stale Bailey, you were at the city council meeting and it was interesting.
Yes.
So you had, and I say it's the spending spree, it just continues. For a city that continues to raise taxes, what strikes you is they continue to spend money. When will this nonsense stop? And they just continue to do it like it's no big deal. You just had money spent on an attorney to cover the emails. So now $31,000 for the propaganda officer, who is a propaganda officer. That's all she is. She's there to put out propaganda for the city.
And change the video.
And change the videos, right, in order to make sure that she constructs the narrative that they want to construct. So now they get $30,000 plus for her vehicle. And then, oh no, that wasn't enough. Then they voted another. While we're at it, let's throw another $40,000 plus to the temporary city manager. What?
Well, it's not their money; it's the taxpayers' money.
When you're just playing with other people's money, you can just continue to spend it like it's no big deal.
It's endless.
And then they'll come back and they'll say, "Oh no, we're short of money. We're going to raise taxes again." These are purported conservatives. But most of the people on the city council are purported conservatives. And they just keep spending money like they're drunken sailors.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of this?
I think that they're being irresponsible, and I am surprised that not one of them questioned the 2025-2026 budget when it got brought up. Not one of them questioned the vehicle. The public information officer was in that room.
Did they even question her as to what she's doing with this vehicle?
No, not one question.
So she puts in a request that she needs a vehicle. Nobody asked any questions about it.
No, nobody asked a single thing about it. It did not get brought up. Nobody seemed to, that was there present, ask any questions. Now, you saw a lot of people give feedback on social media, and nobody was for it.
But it doesn't matter because they don't care about that.
Well, they pretend they don't see social media, but we know better.
Right.
We know that they get obsessive with it.
I'm sure as they get closer to the election, they're going to be a little bit more concerned about social media. But propaganda officer, which is what she is, she's a propaganda officer. She now gets a car. So together with the car that she's getting and her salary of $89,000, $89,200, right? So she's now making over $100,000. That pushes another person over that $100,000 mark. And you have Titusville, a city of 50,000 citizens, just spending money like they're drunken sailors.
I mean, this is exactly how they continue to benefit off the system. And I said this last time, and it's just a reminder. They'll come out and they'll say, well, she only gets paid $89,000. Well, do you know what the median salary is for the income for a household in Titusville? I mean, how many people make $89,000?
In Titusville.
Do you make $89,000 a year?
No, and then the average salary for the city of Titusville employee is like $51,000. So she starts off, and remember, they implemented this position after they were under attack from Andrew Connor's situation, and they lost control of that narrative and the whole situation with the water situation. So they figured like they needed a propaganda officer. And so that's what she does. She spreads propaganda for the city. And so now she has a car, 30,000 plus. How can a city who raised taxes 8 of the last 9 years continue to spend money like this? It's not, as you say, their money. It's your money, the citizens' money. You're going to be paying for it. they're going to come back around and they're going to ask for another tax increase. I don't see how they're not going to do it. Am I wrong?
I mean, with all of the attorneys that they keep having to get and they keep opening themselves up for lawsuits, they're going to have to raise your taxes because they keep messing up. They keep giving it out like it's candy. They don't stop spending.
And the only way to stop this is, well, 2026 is coming up, and we're going to remind you of the people that were involved in this. 2026 is coming up. The Board of Adjustments, this was just a train wreck on Wednesday, and the train just keeps going down the track, just running over everything in its path. First of all, the board chairman just does something that's completely unconstitutional, and it makes me, I'm convinced most of your politicians and people that are on boards, they have no idea about the Constitution. And they just run roughshod over it. They don't even care. Some of them just act like they don't even care.
Well, some of them even say they don't care. They
Right.
will tell you to your face, I don't care.
Okay,
about your rights.
$1,000.
What does that have to do with A?
Please, can we stop the clock?
No, we're not going to stop the
Oh,
clock.
thank you. Thank you very much.
You're quite
You're very
welcome.
cruel, okay?
I want to know what
I don't like it.
you're
In other words,
talking
because
on
you-
an item.
you-
I want to know
This is
what
the
that-
same thing you did last time. In other words, you interrupted me. You took my time. I don't like what you're doing. Do you understand that? Do you understand that?
You know
I don't
what,
like what's going
Stan?
on.
I don't really care.
I don't really care.
I don't care.
I know
You're
you.
by the Constitution. And so you ought to be concerned about that. If they're not concerned about the Constitution, that means they can do anything they want to do. And it's not going to matter. So here in this situation, the chairman tells a citizen, put down your signs. We're not going to have those up in here. And he obviously doesn't realize this is unconstitutional. You were there. Tell me what happened.
Well, I was sitting next to some of the people that were holding the signs. They were really small signs. They weren't really big. They were low on their lap. They weren't obstructing anybody's view. They weren't waving it. They weren't distracting. They weren't doing anything. They were sitting there very silently. The one sign said something about you serve us, not developers, something like that. And then the other sign said, we live here, we get to decide. And this was concerning a decision that was being made on the comprehensive plan that can affect the future of this city and development. And so there was a moment that Chair Taylor, he wasn't even paying attention to the speaker. He was so irate about the signs. He interrupted the speaker, who was the developer's lawyer, and he said, you need to put those signs away right now. But he called them displays. He didn't call them signs. He said, put the displays away. And so we put that video footage up. It was captured on 7 different cameras, this whole ordeal. And the only person that actually interrupted the meeting was the chair himself. And you could tell in that moment, the assistant.
So just out of the
Yeah.
blue sky, he gets this notion to tell people to put the signs away.
Yeah, they're sitting there quietly with the signs. I think he had just noticed them, and he just was beside himself that how dare people have a sign.
So he kind of went into a frenzy.
Yeah, you could tell he was very triggered by the notion of somebody having a piece of paper with colorful markers on it.
Wow. And so what happened from that point?
So Miss Baker, who was sitting next to me, he says, you need to put your sign away. She just very respectfully said, no, sir, this is my constitutional right. So calm. It was the best way I have seen something like that handled in a very long time.
What ensued after that?
He dug his heels in, and he basically then eventually just, called the cops, just like you saw Jason Steele with off with their head. It was just very
Guards!
like police or your officer, go get her. And
That put the cop in a bad situation, right? So now you're asking him to do an unconstitutional act,
yes,
which we know it's an unconstitutional act because they later admitted it.
and it put the officer in a compromising position to go against the oath that he swore. And she didn't make him grab her and drag her out, because there was definitely a mutual respect there. She didn't want that to happen, and she knew that he was in a compromised situation. And everyone loves this officer. They love the officers that check you in and check you out. They're some of the best police officers in the community.
And this guy has a good reputation
Yes.
around the city as being a great cop. I think that my wife has worked with him, just has a good reputation.
Yeah, he does.
So he was put in a bad situation.
Yeah, he was. And she even shook his hand after she was taken out. She shook his hand and she's like, I'm sorry you had to do that. I mean, I think people recognize that he was put in a really bad position. And really, to me, it's not a reflection of him. It's a reflection of Chief John Lau and his leadership and not backing his officers up and telling them to stand for the Constitution and the oath that they swear to. And for the chairman and even the assistant city attorney who was there, Chelsea Farrell, for them to allow that to happen. And you could tell she was very uncomfortable.
Now, she
45 pages.
Excuse me, would you put down here, would you put down, we're not going to have displays in here. You can put it down, please. I'm not allowing displays while until you're speaking. Please I'm asking you to place them down. You two now. I am requesting that you not put displays on.
I have a constitutional right.
Then you may now either leave the property or leave the building if you're not going to comply. You have a choice.
Yes, sir.
Officer?
You're violating my constitutional right. Lawsuit.
Huh? She can keep her. Hey, you keep your sign up and we'll call you and come back. I'm not going to allow you to stand here with the sign. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
After you guys went outside, she actually came out and tried to resolve the situation. Did she not?
She did. Yes, she did. She immediately asked Taylor, you could hear her on the mic say recess, recess, and he called for a recess. And as soon as he did, she walked up to him and they started talking inside the room, and that's captured on camera. And so then when she came out to the hallway, she respectfully asked me to turn off my cameras, and I did. I knew that she wanted to have a conversation with Ms. Baker, but I was out there as an advocate ensuring that her rights were upheld. And there were numerous people that were telling them, you have just opened yourself up for a lawsuit. And they were told repeatedly, the police were told repeatedly, you have opened yourself up. And for a city that fought the right to clean water, and their biggest reason was all the lawsuits, man, they sure are really good about, opening themselves up.
Heard people say off camera that they don't care. They're going to do what they want to do. And so the only way that you're going to change that is to change the people that are in office. And so this got resolved. Al Taylor had to dial that back because of the fact he was told, presumably by the city attorney, this is unconstitutional, right? So he dials it back. What happens after that?
So she was allowed back in the room. The entire room was cheering for her because they all knew it was wrong. And so she went back in there and she sat with her sign very quietly, respectfully, and he got back on the video, and you can see it on their YouTube where he says, I was informed, I apologize, I was informed that we don't have any policies about this. So they didn't admit on the record, well, we broke your constitutional rights, and, but he was forced to apologize. And
Lawsuit coming?
I don't know. It's a good question.
It's grounds for one.
It is.
And it doesn't really matter that they let her back into the room. The fact that they put her out.
They had already violated her rights.
Yeah.
It was too late. They had already embarrassed her. They had already had her leave. He even told her initially, he said, you can leave the building completely. And then he said, you just need to leave. And she is a tax-paying citizen, and these people serve her. She's the...
So one of the other things here is that it's just not really electing people. Another part of it is the judicial aspect of it. You're going to have to start having lawsuits levied against cities up and down Brevard County until this nonsense stops. Right?
I would agree. It's unfortunate because at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that pay for that lawsuit. They pay for those mistakes. So the taxpayers should be the ones that are outraged by this constitutional violation. Technically, she could file an ethics complaint against Al Taylor, and she could go to other avenues to filing complaints. Because obviously lawsuits are always the last thing that anyone wants to go through and do, especially when it impacts the taxpayers. But like you said, eventually it ends up being the last resort. It has to be done because you have to hold these people accountable. And it seems like the only thing that they understand is money.
Right, they're tone deaf. They're not listening anymore. I mean, you just can see in a lot of the things they do that they are not listening to the citizen. The next thing is that they went on then on that Board of Adjustment, and this even just got more bizarre, that they make a ruling saying we can't rule or set a precedent because the city council only has the authority to do that, when the city council says, no, it was the Board of Adjustment that had the right to do this. They just were passing the buck back and forth. This is just bizarre.
I see the city council as the one that makes the rules.
I am not in favor of changing the way we do this.
I see the city council as the one that makes the rules.
To me, it's undercutting our Board of Adjustments and Appeals.
I see the city council as the one that makes the rules.
They're making good decisions. They're not making it based on politics. They're making it based on what the law says.
If you feel that things are wrong in the city code, I would suggest you have city council adjust the code.
They're not making it based on politics. They're making it based on what the law says.
We are not elected here,
To me, it's undercutting our Board of Adjustments and Appeals.
but to have us come up and set precedent and make rules that will account, I think that's the city council's job.
Yeah, they were playing hot potato the night before. It was literally the night before the city council meeting. You have a council member, Jolynn Nelson, up there saying, oh, we have full faith in the Board of Adjustments and they have the full authority to make these decisions and they should never come back to us, the council members. And then, not even 24 hours later, you have the Board of Adjustment saying, this isn't our problem, the city council needs to deal with
Then
this.
it begs the question, why do we need the Board of Adjustments? If they can't make a decision, and if they're not there to make a decision, what are they there for?
They are there to uphold the law, and the law is the comprehensive plan, and they did not do that Wednesday night.
So they failed the citizens.
Yes, they did. Except for Green. Except for Board Member Green. He has consistently voted for the citizens, for the people, and to uphold the law.
So where
Most
are we at
importantly,
now?
to uphold the law.
Barring a lawsuit against the developer, this is done.
Well, actually, now the citizens do have an opportunity. They can file a lawsuit against the city for violating the comprehensive plan, and I'm pretty sure court would uphold that.
Because this is the law.
Yes, it
So
is.
the Board of Adjustments, just to be clear about this, the Board of Adjustments would not follow the law. This is the law, and they knew it. So what did they do? They weaseled their way around the law by saying, oh, it's not our responsibility.
And it's so unfortunate because this mistake, it wasn't made by the Board of Adjustments. It wasn't even made by some of the council members that are serving on that board right now. It was made when there was a woman named Peggy in there as the planning director, and it was a decision made years ago, and it was a mistake. And they don't want to admit to the mistake because they know they lose either way. The city loses either way. They will get sued by the developer or they'll get sued by the citizens. And they would much rather make the citizens sue them than go up against the developer.
Because they know the developer has deep pockets.
Yes.
And they know the chances of winning against the developer is not good. So they go against the citizen, make them have to pay out of their pocket. And if they have to have a lawyer, they don't care because they're using the citizens' money to do it anyway. So blah, 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 blah. That's kind of what you're seeing in this situation. And it's really sad. And really, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. And I think the citizens in Royal Oak actually suing the city on the comprehensive plan. And then 2026 can't come fast enough. We will clearly remind you of the people involved in this, and you'll have the opportunity to make a decision about it. The last thing we want to see is public records. Put in many people are putting in public records. There were public records put in, and the Titusville Police Department, trying to get public records from them concerning a lot of things, but they are trying to charge now an exorbitant amount for those records. They sent back a receipt for $536.88. And what's interesting is that the city of Cocoa provided the same records. Here we are. Kudos to you, Cocoa. You provided the same records right here in my crusty little hands on that same information, and they charged nothing.
Right.
And they responded immediately. And here we are, the city of Titusville, the Titusville Police Department, nothing. They're playing games.
Well, and this is what got me involved in Titusville. What put them on my radar was public records initially, because we work with a public records expert, somebody who is an expert in public record laws. And they have filed over 100 lawsuits in the state of Florida. They know this public record thing through and through. I mean, and so I'm working with them and I'm telling them, I make public records requests across to all 67 counties in the state of Florida. And Titusville has been one of them that use these tactics. I call it tactics. And, sometimes you'll see cities do it, and it's sometimes just pure laziness because they don't feel like doing the work to get the records. So, I try to give a benefit of a doubt. And then sometimes it's nefarious. And I do feel that this is nefarious. The person that sent this record request said that they requested the same exact thing, word for word, to the city of Cocoa, no problem. And we've seen this time and time again with Titusville. This isn't the only incident.
Well, they're playing games because I've sent in public records requests to the Titusville Police Department, and I keep getting back, oh, well, Mr. Jeffrey, we want to make sure that you're trying this, or well, you're really asking this, and it's posturing, it seems. And then you get this back where they're charging. Now they want to try to charge. And so this is a common tactic.
Oh, it sure is. And they do. They have the ability. I mean, we just seen it proven with Cocoa. That's the perfect example because it was the exact word for word request. But this is a request that's often done across the state of Florida. Now, they could have charged a reasonable fee. I mean, maybe $11, $20, maybe $30 most, depending on the time. And that's reasonable. But $536 is outrageous. How many citizens that pay taxes on this archiving system and for them to maintain these public records could really afford $536, and they know that. And so it's a deterrent. It's a way to not allow you to obtain the information. And to me, it's anti-transparency, and it throws up a lot of red flags on the Titusville Police Department.
There is constantly in Titusville consistent resistance to the truth. Well, you see it with the emails. Why not just release the emails? If you have nothing to hide, just release the emails. No, they want to litigate it. And you ask for public records. Oh, no. It's just a constant fight. And if you are doing something and you have nothing to hide, just release the information. It's the public's right to know. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. It is the public's right to know. And this 17,700 emails, they're still playing games with that. And it should be a red flag for every person in the city that your city, your government, does not want to be transparent and publicize what is going on behind closed doors.
And that tells you all you need to know. And we'll see you next week on As Titusville Turns. And welcome to the Palm Bay Report with Ruth Kofold. And Ruth, there's always a lot going on in Palm Bay, and let's start with the Centerpoint Church Price Family Homes Agreement. And so there's this zoning issue that we talked about last time. And so there was a lot of people that showed up to talk about this issue. What happened?
Correct. We had several citizens come and ask questions of the builder. The builder's very nice. He's a family builder. They've been in Palm Bay for a while, so they're not one of these other people
outsiders
coming, getting money and leaving. But the questions that I have are, it's a subdivision they're building of 23 homes, and then there's adding 9 lots on another side of the property that they have an agreement with Centerpoint Church. So the subdivision would have to be an HOA. and this is all in their plan.
No,
So
why
they
does
said-
it have to be an HOA?
Well, that's what he's building.
Okay,
So that's
so
what he's done, meaning that small amount of people, it's just one road, one cul-de-sac kind of thing. And that one little bitty subdivision in there would have to take care of the roads and the lift station. And it'll be an HOA. So how big would the HOA be? Who's going to get the tax money that these people are going to be paying if they're taking care of everything? It looks like they might even be taking care of water too. Not sure. Didn't see that answer yet. So I'm a little concerned that will all of that be disclosed if this to go forward? Again, it hasn't been to planning and zoning yet. He's getting ready to submit it. It will have to go through that whole process, planning and zoning. So I'm hoping that all the citizens in my area will just go in there and say, no, we do not need 76 more cars running through here, and we do not need any more building in here. This is called spot building. There's another petition out there in change.org about let's stop spot building. I have a petition out there on change.org that says let's just stop rezoning altogether, like the council said they were going to do when they campaigned.
Now, there was a question. So somebody under the Palm Bay report made the question, well, all kinds of property have been rezoned throughout Florida. But at the same time, when residences establish a community, the presumption is that zoning is for a reason.
Right.
And the presumption is that zoning will stay that way, and that's why people buy into that. And so what do you
Right.
say to someone who believes that you shouldn't do?
I'm just when they built the our subdivision especially, I don't even know it has a name. It was just part of the Port Malabar area. So this Port Malabar area, if you look at it on the plat maps, it goes all the way to US 1 and it goes all the way to Port Malabar Road. So this is all part of that huge development effort that happened 26 years ago. And so when they did all that zoning, it had to be for a reason, like you say. So we have more density now, so where's that water going? So we're concerned about all this building going on. There's a canal back there, but where's all this water going to go? Right now, there are a lot of citizens that are complaining to the city council about, hey, these builders, they built 6 feet higher than my property, so where's that water going? It's on my property.
It's a real concern.
So
And you've
what
seen
are
that
you
that's-
going to do about it? See, the city doesn't care. They don't care about what happens in the future after these people leave. The builders don't care after they leave. This builder may, because he's homegrown
Local,
here.
yeah.
So if he's concerned about his reputation, he'll be doing what he needs to do to get stuff done. On the other hand, I just don't want them there. Not in my backyard kind of thing. As a personal citizen of this particular situation.
Well, and that's kind of been, poo-pooed, right? Not in my backyard, but really that's a
Really?
real concern. Well, they have a name for it. Is it NIMBY?
Yeah,
Not in my
not
backyard.
in my backyard.
And so, what's wrong with that?
What is wrong with that?
You moved there and you've invested a lot of money in your property for the reason, with the presumption that there's not going to be any zoning changes, right?
Right. And we haven't really, pitched a fit about the narrow roads. You can barely fit 2 cars on the same road going past each other. If there's anybody parked on the side, you're not going to pass it quickly. And I usually ask my visitors to just park off the street. If you have to get in my yard, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want these crazies coming down the street, and hit your car. And this is not going to change if they put more cars in here.
It's just going to get worse. Now, there's a proposal with the Palm Bay City Council to suppress parts of the city council meeting.
Yes, that just came and hit my desk today. I had citizens calling me this morning. As soon as I got to church, my Salt and Light Council said, did you see the latest? Basically, Councilman Jaffe submitted, and he's trying to change the ordinance for meetings. And part of that is the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a meeting participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, obscene, inciting, profane, or irrelevant. All according to their definition.
Now, according to the United States Constitution,
Correct.
which I don't know if they've read it,
I'm pretty sure they haven't.
that any speech is protected. right?
Right,
Now,
free
whatever
speech.
they set up, the parameters they set up as far as time is concerned,
Right.
is fine, but as far as what people say, they can't tell people what to say and what not to say. That's just crazy.
Exactly. And they've already taken one opportunity for people to speak after the meeting so that we could respond to what was already said. So we're supposed to speak before the actual meeting gets started with our issues and our things that we want to see happen. But if something like new business, like this new business coming up on Thursday, they start their meeting at 6, and this is new business. And they want to change the ordinance for
Why-
the meetings now
Why do they want to change this?
because they want to silence people. There are certain people that come to the meeting and until they get their issue resolved, they come over and over again. They want to get a resolution to their issue, such as the stormwater stuff. There is a man, he's a construction guy. He can't even get them to fix the culvert that was damaged during stormwater restoration. So he can't even get them to fix that. I mean, he can fix a lot of stuff, but if it belongs to the city, he has to get them to do it. So, and they haven't. It's been a long time. At least, I think, at least this issue is over a year old. There's another issue that there is a deputy chief that was allegedly wronged in employment. So I haven't got into this issue totally down deep, and I don't know what I can and cannot say, but he has been repeatedly to the council meeting as he can, as his right, because he has to want to voice his situation to the council. And if council isn't responding at all without any sort of, after the meeting, I want you to talk to such and such.
So they're just blowing them off.
They want to blow them off, and they want to, they also want to, arrest people if they won't leave the podium before their time is up. So I have a feeling, again, my opinion, this is not on here, but it's pretty timely that there have been many issues happening lately since this council was put in place, that too many people are saying you're not doing the right thing.
So this Mike Jaffe, his name continues to come up, and
It
it
does.
seems like everything that he proposes seems to be completely questionable concerning the Constitution. Who is this guy? What is he
He's a
doing?
builder. He's part of the Realty Builder Associations here in town. And part of what he ran on was he was going to try and fix the infrastructure because he knows the building community and so on and so forth. But I think that his actions are more about silencing citizens.
So you think that this Lance Fisher, they're trying to silence him? Now, he's filed an EEOC complaint,
Correct?
which is going to be heard,
Right.
and they believe that he has
Right.
some merit to what he's saying here. That he
Yes,
may
I
have
do
been
believe
wrongly
that
fired.
that the EOC has issued a again alleged. I can't validate it because I don't have all the information. But he says that they have responded to him in a extra timely fashion, because he wasn't expecting it to be responded to in a certain amount of time, and it was responded to him in a way less less than 2 months. I'm going to say.
What can citizens do to fight back against the suppression of the city council meetings?
They can go up there and start, every citizen, I think every citizen in Brevard County should go to Palm Bay and say, no, we do not want you to create a precedent. We do not want you to come up in here in our city and start telling us, first of all, how we should be responding to your actions, when we should be responding, and in what, to hear. It's like, if you don't, I mean, it'll be a minute if I don't see something he wants to change in here, says, and if you don't dress in a suit, you can't speak.
So this would
I
be
mean,
like
this is how invasive not only this is, but the presiding officer, whoever that is, gets to have carte blanche.
It'd be like me going to my employer, setting the terms of how I'm going to operate,
Right.
and
Right.
say, you better like it.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember the IBM days. I was told as a woman I had to wear a suit. It had to be blue. I had to have a white shirt. I couldn't have my heels higher than this. And, I didn't go there because of that. I said, no, I'm a professional. I know how to act professional and be professional. Now, there are some people that do get up there, they're quite emotional, and they do say the wrong thing, but who doesn't?
At the end of the day, the citizens are the government.
Right.
And they should be listening to the citizens, and that's,
We're your boss.
well, they've
We
lost.
are the boss. We, the people, are the boss.
And the people have to allow them to remember that
Right.
by pushing back on it. And if you don't push back, then, shame on you. You're going to lose a lot of freedoms. So then the next thing that we wanted to look at is, so Goodson wanted to use $20,000 of his funds to give to the Space Coast Pride. He tried to push this through. And by the way, Mr. Goodson, something's wrong here. I mean, you just have become very cantankerous here lately. He seems like a cantankerous old guy.
Yep.
But anyway, that aside,
He was going to give $5,000 to Space Coast Pride because
For what?
the chair to use in their Space Coast Pride Festival that's
tell
supposed
us
to be.
what the Space Coast Pride is.
Okay, Space Coast Pride is an organization that supports LGBTQ, transgender, CRT, SEL, all right?
And
to say that they are a culture,
And
because this comes from the tourism cultural grants. So first of all, Space Coast Pride is not cultural. It is a lifestyle.
paying for this kind of behavior, and and here's another issue now.
Right.
You have Goodson, who is a purported Republican, and I use that word lightly. Again, you see
Right.
these people who are in office who operate under the conservative banner, and they just push crazy stuff through. And this would be another example of it.
It is
That's
another
a
example
kind
of it. And why would they be asking for money anyway? They are supported by George Soros, Planned Parenthood, many organizations in the Space Coast, like Blue Origin, a couple. You can go out to their website and see all their sponsors for their parades and things like that in the past 5 years. And why do they need money?
Yeah. Well, see, and so people say, oh, this is cultural, but this would be like if the government decided that they wanted to fund Christian things,
Right.
people would be in an uproar,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I
They-
mean,
they would be absolutely pushing back on that.
if I would have
right?
come to the city council or to the commission and said, hey, we need $20,000 to do a Bible reading marathon. So I don't have a problem with people who have a different way or a different lifestyle, but my tax dollars should not pay for anything I don't agree with. So, and that lifestyle is something I don't agree with. We also have pictures from the last festival that they showed graphic books out in the open to children that the pictures were, children were this big, maybe 4 years old, graphic pictures of sexual acts, how to have sex with same gender. They had graphic books and all kinds of toys. This is what was captured on film that we have evidence of. And Mr. Goodson, when I got up to speak, I did go up to the commission and I did speak against this, saying, these people are coming for our children.
And what did Goodson, what was his response to this?
Until they break the law, I am going to treat them as though they are any regular citizen. And I don't want to hear anything else about we the people. And the gesture that I just made. I mean, he got all up about it.
Well, yeah, and he's been really cantankerous lately. I honestly think, Mr. Goodson, you should resign. And
Right,
get somebody
and which
else in
was
there.
very hypocritical of him, because a citizen before me had, unfortunately, some language that was not appropriate, I don't believe. She knows that. But the two of them exchanged gestures as well. They all waved at each other. And I sat there and I looked at, before I said anything, I said, it was pretty hypocritical of you, Mr. Goodson, to sit there and want to call her out on her language, yet you want to give money, my tax dollars, to this organization that is a lifestyle and not a culture.
And, what he did there on that as she was going out the door was childish, and you wouldn't expect that a county commissioner would do that.
Right.
It's just an amazing thing what's going on here and what they try to do. The motion did fail.
It did fail
it didn't
because
get a second.
when he proposed, he said his motion, the other commissioners did not give him a second.
And that was a good thing.
And all about, we hear about we the people. We the people, those are the people. So until they do something wrong in Melbourne, that they get arrested for, or they do something wrong, then I'm going to give them the same money we'd give to possibly a German parade that wants to take the Jewish people back to Germany. So that's all I got to say. If you don't want to vote for it, don't vote for it. But be prepared. Don't let me hear you say "we the people" again, okay?
Okay, that's the end of the discussion. Or is there any other discussion?
I have some discussion. I am opposed to giving tax dollars to Space Coast Pride. The things that I have seen put out there that go on at this event is not what I would consider a family-friendly event. When these cultural dollars were put out to be spent, it was supposed to be for things that everybody could go to. And I don't think that that fits within what we're looking at.
Okay, Commissioner Goodson, it's your item, sir.
Would like to make a motion for approval of my $20,000.
Okay. I have a motion. Is there a second? Sir, would you like to amend your motion?
Nope.
Okay. We'll show that dies from a lack of second then.
Nope.
That's a good thing. We've defeated it twice now.
Thank you, Ruth, for bringing us up to date on what's going on in Palm Bay. Next Sunday, or next week, we're going to have Councilman Mike Hammer on.
All right.
Hammer time.
It'll be
next
Hammer
week, and
time.
we're going to have a good time
Absolutely.
talking to him about Palm Bay. Thanks for joining us on this edition of What's Going On in Palm Bay, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
And welcome to this week's segment of the Commish Report. And so a lot of things went on last week, Katie, in the firefighter assessment. And boy, the county commission meetings are becoming quite exciting. So what do you think happened, and where are we going with it?
So the commission came to an agreement to send out a not to exceed letter for the fire assessment for 37%. That means that now during the public hearings about the fire assessment, the county commission cannot raise the fire assessment more than 37%. So it's not that it's set in stone, it's that we can't go above that number.
So what did that mean to the firefighters?
Unfortunately, that was the lowest amount that would have gotten them to a better contract. And so some of the firefighters seemed upset because they would have rathered have a little bit of room in case, there was some negotiation that needed to go on between the public and the commission. I personally would have liked to see a little bit more room as well, because, a Florida Today article came out and there were some other news agencies that came out and falsely said that I was advocating for a 75% increase, and which is completely untrue. What I was advocating for was for the not to exceed letter to be at that 75%, because then it would have left the door completely open for an open conversation with the public about what do you all want, and what kind of increase do you all feel is appropriate for our firefighters.
So the firefighters saw this as locking them in.
Right.
And a lot of them actually walked out, didn't they?
All of them. The room was full of firefighters and they all stood up and walked out.
And so this was bad news for Brevard County.
Yes and no, because there's also the MSTU, which is a voter-approved millage, the 1998 referendum, which we've talked about on here.
So what does that mean, MST?
It's just another line on your taxes, and it's below the line, so it does not, the cap isn't affected by that. And so right now, the county's being assessed at 0.4 mils, but 0.4, and then the voters approved in 1998 0.6, but the county's been rolling that back year after year, making it smaller and smaller, which is part of the reason why our fire department is so underfunded right now.
What was the reason to roll it back?
I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was because the leadership didn't understand how the cap worked, but I don't know if they didn't realize that it wasn't part of the cap. And anything that's a voter-approved millage is not part of the cap. That's the whole point of the cap. The 3% tax cap is so that the government has to go out and ask the citizens, what do you want to be taxed on and
Instead
for?
of spending willy-nilly.
Correct.
Right.
And so if you add the rolling up the MSTU, the 1998 referendum, to the voter-approved amount, the 0.6, plus the possible 37%, if you add those two things together, it gets the fire department to a pretty substantial increase, and it'll give us the room to get them a great contract.
So I know they call it executive session for a reason, so you can't talk about what happened in the executive session, but can you say whether there were some good things that came out of the executive session? So it was a 4-1 vote, I think, and I remember, to go into executive session.
Right.
You asked for that. Were you satisfied with what happened there?
Like you said, I can't talk about what we talked about in there. We were able to come to, reluctantly, to come to an agreement amongst the board, but I'm not totally convinced that it'll get us to a place where both parties will come back to the table. But I'm hoping that it'll at least open the door to continue the communication.
So new county manager is going to be coming on board soon. How will that affect the negotiations?
Right now, Jim Liesenfeld, who will be the interim county manager, he will take over that role for negotiating, and then most likely we won't have a new county manager till, I'm guessing, October at the latest.
So this will be done before then?
Hopefully. It better be done.
So is just a change, is that going to maybe give a chance to jumpstart this and maybe give new life to maybe the negotiations?
I'm hopeful. I think that, when people are backed into their corners, sometimes when you bring in different players into the situation, it helps bring the temperature down. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a more cohesive negotiation process, a more respectful negotiation process, because the things that I observed over the past year and a half, it's shameful.
Well, Manager Abate kept saying in the meeting that the county never walked away from negotiations. Now,
That's not
I've seen, so I kept saying, when I heard him say that, it seemed to me that the last negotiation meeting, they did walk away from it.
Right.
So that didn't think
With the
that was
magistrate.
true.
Correct. And I was even in a negotiations, I can't remember what month it was, but I was even in a negotiations, and this was probably about midway through, where all of us, the public, the negotiation teams, we were all in the negotiation room, and they went out to caucus, which is when they break off into their own rooms so that they can strategize and then come back. And it had to have been at least an hour and a half they were gone. And they never came back to the table. They left all of us there, just sitting there. It's just a lie. And the county manager, he was not at these negotiations. The lawyer was there, and Chief Voltaire was there. And
So how could he say that with such affirmation?
right. I don't know if he just doesn't remember.
He kept saying it over and over and over again. And I'm thinking, they'll ask him, just because you say something that's not true enough,
Right.
doesn't mean that people are going to believe it or that it makes it
Exactly.
true.
Right.
And he just continued to say that. And I
Yeah.
thought, and that's really disingenuous.
And it's because, this has been a really difficult situation, and people don't like, their dirty laundry getting aired out.
So ego's involved.
Probably. I mean, I think that at this point, it would be really nice if everybody could just put their weapons down and let's try to talk and work our way through this, because at the end of the day, we have a hospital that just shut down, 91 vacancies, and people's lives are going to be at risk, and not just the public, but the people who have to run into these burning buildings and people who show up when you're having a heart attack. Everybody's lives are at stake.
Firefighters are close now to running just 2 people on a call or in a fire truck, or did I hear that?
Some tough decisions are going to have to be made, closing stations or running 2 main engines. Both of those things will result in
Response times,
Oh,
care,
right.
all the way down the line.
Right. So
I
we
mean-
really need to get to a place where we are fully funded. And frankly, I don't think that we can wait until July. I hope that we can come to an agreement before then.
Do you think it's possible?
I think so. I'm going to keep trying.
That brings us to Parrish Park, which is in Titusville. Katie, what a mess. So I'll just walk you through. Me and my wife walks there all the time, and just a couple of years ago, we saw that they were transforming this, and the question was why. Citizens in Titusville fought against it. Rita Pritchard, who was the county commissioner, thought it, in her infinite wisdom, that this needed to be changed into the wonderful park that it is, so-called. Now it's a mess. It's crumbling, and it's just, I mean, what is going on there? I mean, they say that the engineers knew what was going on. They purportedly checked this out, right? The city or the county had engineers that obviously were involved in this process. How do they not know that the erosion was going to take place that's leading to the degradation of the concrete that they poured? I mean, I'm not a smart guy, but it seemed like to me they would have put up a retaining wall or something that would have accounted for that. How did we get here?
I had the same question. You spend $5 million on this renovation that no one wanted, and now it's totally destroyed by one storm that wasn't even that severe. That's pretty concerning, and it's a glaring reason as to why I don't blindly trust the engineers that keep telling us, oh, you know, there won't be any flooding with this project, or there won't be any this or that, you know. And Parrish Park is a glaring example of how engineers sometimes get it wrong. And
that's a big get wrong.
Right.
I mean, how do you not catch this?
Absolutely. And I even asked the county, I said, you know, what if we just put it back how it was? If this is going to happen every time it storms, why not just put it back? And the reason why we can't do that, unfortunately, is because we'd have to pay back all the federal money that we got, all the state and federal money that we got towards this project. We'd have to pay it back. And so now we have to, we can't obviously do that, so we have to fix it. And
So is
because
it going to
was-
cost more money to fix it, or?
Well, luckily, because it was storm damage, we're going to get FEMA money, we're going to get insurance money, that type of thing, to make sure that it gets put back to how it was. And so what I suggested is, let's try to brainstorm, how can we shore up this property so that this amount of erosion doesn't happen again. So I have them looking into mangroves, different options out there to help keep the sand in place, so that it doesn't happen this severe every time it storms.
Now, the irony of this is that the people begged them not to do this.
Right?
They had a lot of meetings about this, and the people begged them not to do this.
Yeah,
Now look at what we have.
I know.
I mean, isn't it ironic?
This is exactly why we should not, as the government, spend money without the approval of the public. Because then when these things happen, of course the public is going to be enraged. You know, not only did they not want the project, but now it's ruined and we've wasted all of this money.
You know, and that's why the founders continue to say limited government, limited government, limited government. And if you don't go back to limited government, you're just going to continue to have problems, corruption. It's just going to continue. And so you see this is a situation where they say that the people don't know what they're talking about. But I think that the people got the last laugh on this, I guess, because this is just a mess.
Right.
So they are over there working now. I saw workers over there last week. So is there a timetable as to when this is going to be completed?
It's probably going to take a couple months, honestly.
And then what?
And then hopefully it'll be open to the public. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we don't have a whole lot of hurricanes this year and it doesn't happen again. But
You might want to bring
yeah.
your surfboard if that happens. 'Cause it could be slip sliding away. And another thing is on the county manager request for proposal. So there's some question about what your stance was on that.
Right. So what we did last week at the commission meeting was we agreed upon the scope of services for the consultant to go out and look for the next county manager. And so there were some things in it that I wanted changed. The process was basically a cone of silence, that nobody can speak to anybody, and that like it was the county attorney, the head of HR, and one county commissioner who were going to pick the consultant, or at least bring the ones back for the board to vote on. And that whole situation I just felt was completely wrong. I think that it should have been out in the public. I think all of the consultants should have come to the county commission meeting or a workshop where all 5 of us, who are all duly elected, could meet all of the applicants so that we could ask them questions publicly, so that the community could come and see this and ask their own questions publicly. Got totally misconstrued, and some people were saying, oh, she just wants it behind closed doors and all this corruption and whatnot. And I'm like, no, I want the exact opposite of that. I want it so public that everyone will see it and be able to participate in the process. Unfortunately, I didn't win that because my board members, I don't know if they didn't know what I was talking about, or I'm not quite sure because none of them gave me their reasoning. But some of the things that I did win on is I got a timeline. So we're gonna get a timeline from the consultant to say, can you get this job done in this amount of time? I also got the contract change that instead of giving us an update bi-weekly, they're going to update us weekly. So I really appreciate Commissioner Feltner and Commissioner Altman for voting with me on those things and making those changes in the scope of services.
Now, Altman has voted with you a couple of times here recently. He's becoming very chummy with you there. So we'll see how that goes. So a lot going on at the county. And so thanks, Katie. Know it's a tough job. Hang in there. Firefighters, there's hopefully help coming for Brevard County. It's not just the firefighters. If they lose, Brevard County is going to lose.
Right.
Thanks for joining us on the Commish Report for this week. We'll see you again next week. And that brings us to legislative action by the people in Tallahassee. I don't know what to call them anymore because some of the things they do up there is just beyond my comprehension. But they wanted to pass this bill 1080, and it was by Senator McLean out of Ocala. And so it went down, Katie. And the thing that's interesting, it went down on a vote of 18 to 19. 9 Republicans joined with 10 Senate Democrats in defeating the bill. That shows me that your calling and your pushback is probably affecting them, and they decided not to do this. The bill would have allowed developers to get their request approved by application, bypassing public hearings and other requirements under the voter-approved rural boundary initiatives, which make it harder to develop land in designated rural areas. And so, Katie, what do you think? I mean, is this, there's other bills floating around in the House. It looks like that might actually still get them there. Are you surprised by this?
Honestly, I'm not really surprised. I'm frustrated. I understand that we have some areas in the state that have housing shortage and an affordable housing shortage. But I really believe that if our legislature would just focus on smart development and fixing the insurance crisis, that would go a lot further to allow for affordable housing than
what they're doing here.
Trying to fill every piece of agriculture land, which, by the way, historically is wet land. And so if you fill all that land in and develop all the land, where's the water going to go? And that's just going to make our insurance rates skyrocket even more and make more unaffordable housing.
You know that old axiom, never use an axe to get a fly off a friend's forehead?
Right.
This is what they're doing, it seems like. They're
Exactly.
taking an axe to a problem that doesn't need one, and they're just going crazy and swinging crazily. And it makes you wonder why. And, you know, as they say always, follow the money, right? And you wonder if this is what's driving this, because there are more crises that they could be dealing with other than this. And like you said, the insurance crisis is just out of control, but they're not doing anything about that, right?
And so, you know, this week somebody said something to me that was quite shocking. They pretty much said to me, they warned me, and they said, you know, you really need to go be above, you know, and stop spending so much time with the citizens. and be
Wow.
above that. And
Wow.
I have some advice for our legislature. Maybe bring yourselves down a notch and come talk to the citizens, because that's where you're going to find the answer.
So they're up in their Tallahassee enclave, just, living above the citizens, and they're in a fantasy world. And they're making laws for people down at the bottom, and they don't see how it's affecting them.
And really, I feel like it's very hard. This is a hard job, being an elected official, because you have so many people who want something from you. And when I can't even imagine, I know even on my level, which, in the hierarchy of politicians, I'm on the low end, as you get up the ranks in this world, I imagine it only gets harder and harder. And so I just hope that our elected officials, our state reps and state senators, please come spend more time with the people, because that will show you what the issues are. They will tell you what they're seeing on the ground level, how their properties are changing, how, what the issues are. And I know that it's difficult when you have lobbyists and developers and all these people pulling at you, and you only hear their side.
Wouldn't it be good?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they should, in Congress and also in the state, scrap going to a location, because we have the ability to do it now, and all of the representatives stay in their areas and
Right.
vote from those areas.
Yeah.
Why do you have to go to a centralized location? Why do they have to go to Tallahassee? Why do you have to go to Washington, D.C.? That's where the cesspools are. And so you make it easier for these people to be able to lobby you and try to put pressure on you to vote the way they want you to. And your poor citizens, totally out of sight, out of mind, right? And so, hey, okay, there you go. There, you could use that idea of Congress, Tallahassee, take it. You can have it. Take it for your own. But I'm glad for now, this bill has gone down in flames. Well, not down in flames. It lost by one vote, 18-19.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, and we'll keep you abreast on the other bills that are floating around in the House. Hopefully they die a similar death.
Brevard News, your responses. We are going to talk about the best responses from this week. Starting off with Jonathan Burdett. He says, would you be okay if citizen speech were drowned out by distracting signs? I think, I don't have a problem with a piece of paper and just pretty colorful markers. That's literally all it is.
So how are signs drowning out speech? I want to know. I mean, are the signs talking?
No.
The thing for me is, like, if you're standing up and waving a sign and, being disruptive, that's one thing. But sitting quietly with a small sign in your lap, come on, that's not disruptive.
It's a stretch, isn't it?
It is a stretch. I mean, when you think back to the civil rights days, what were they doing? They were walking around with signs on and they weren't saying anything. So would he have had a problem with that? Was that being disruptive?
I don't think so.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, signs have always been a point of communication of your displeasure with something in a public forum.
It should be something very simple. So now we go to Sam too, and he says, it is sad that you apparently work for the county and condone such behavior in response to Jonathan Burdett's commentary on the First Amendment and constitutional rights. And then, we get into his response where he just says, I do not think other people who are silent but who are holding signs should be considered disruptive. So he ends up agreeing in the end that it wasn't disruptive, but he still has an issue with the signs. Then we have Robin Ricker. Why is it always the same liberal disruptors causing problems and refusing to follow the rules at all meetings everyone has to go by? Wow. This seems very personal. They always have to resort to personal attacks, and they don't want to talk about the topic at hand, which is your constitutional right here.
Right.
We're talking about freedom of speech here.
This is not a left or a right issue. This is the Constitution. This is your First Amendment right. And this is something that I brought up was, we all know I was a named plaintiff on the Moms for Liberty lawsuit. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals decision, October 8th, 2024. It is plain and simple. People go out,
Right.
look that ruling up. The courts have been clear. We have a First Amendment right to say what we want at these government meetings. We have an obligation to go and speak to our government and tell them what we want, what we don't want. And nowhere in that First Amendment does it say that you have to be nice while doing it.
And when has defending your constitutional rights become a liberal position?
Correct.
It just baffles me that someone would say this, and it's a baffling thing.
Isn't Robin Richter the one that's put a lot of these people who are violating our constitutional rights in these positions?
She's responsible for a lot of the people that the people are fighting against. I mean, these very people who are violating the constitutional rights, it just raises a lot of questions.
Well, here's the last comment we're going to talk about, and it's on the Charles case in Titusville. Lloyd Chamberlain says, even if the footage doesn't show that the person was picking up a gun because it is out of frame or blocked or just not clear, at least everyone could put that behind them. And then he goes on to say that his office in Minneapolis has a policy on getting footage out immediately, and that they are not the only agency that does that now. And I found that comment very interesting, and it's really important that we do compare how other cities across our nation are handling these types of situations, and if there is a better way to handle it. I mean, do you think it would be better if they release footage immediately?
It seems like that's the best policy. I mean, particularly if there's nothing to hide, just release the footage, right? Let the people decide what's going on. One of the reasons for the body cams was transparency, right? To remove all of the ambiguity of what goes on. I don't understand how complicated this is. The chief here in Titusville is trying to say that this is, he doesn't have any control over this, but the Florida law says that it's the police department that has control over the release of this footage. And he could do it even though he says that he's constrained by the investigations, and I find that a little nebulous. Kind of weaseling out of making some decisions that could be made here.
That's the best responses to our content this week. Continue to interact with us. We really appreciate every comment that comes in, negative, positive feedback. We welcome it all.
And that brings us to our Brevard News poll of the week. And our question for this week was, what do you see as the biggest problem facing Brevard County today? And it's really interesting. The top two are probably what you could expect, right? One, overdevelopment, and coming in a close second is bad politicians. Those probably could be 50-50. Or maybe, actually, bad politicians could be first because it probably leads to the overdevelopment. What do you guys think? And so you had 41% said overdevelopment, 6% said underfunding of services, 12% said infrastructure. I was surprised that more said infrastructure. 31% said bad politicians, 4% said high taxes. That surprised me that it was only 4%. Only 4% said crime and 2% said other.
I chose bad politicians, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like everything on this list falls under bad policy decisions and bad decisions that are being made. And so your infrastructure issues, the reason why we have those is because politicians kick the can down the road. You have overdevelopment because politicians are catering to special interests. And so when I look at this list, I'm like, well, the reason why we're where we are is because we're voting in people that are making these decisions on this list.
Right, because they would be responsible for infrastructure, funding of services, all of that kind of stuff. Would you agree, Katie?
I would have to agree, unfortunately. I mean, this is why I ran, because I wasn't satisfied with my representation thus far. And so, like Stell said, all of this comes to the politicians, our decision-making, and are we listening to the will of the people?
Does it surprise you? I mean, this is the most people that we've had that have voted in a poll so far. We had over 500 people that voted in this poll, so people were really interested in it. Does that surprise you?
No, I think it's a great question, and it's something that I think all sides of the aisle will be happy to participate in, and I think people care about what our issues are in Brevard.
So high taxes, Stell, you're surprised at only 4%?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because maybe it was only a one choice poll question, but
Okay.
again, to me, it falls underneath politicians. They're the ones voting for high taxes. They're the ones overspending our taxes. They're the ones making the decisions with our taxes. So, I think that would be much higher if you had a multiple choice on this. You would probably see a much different outcome.
So then you have that 41% with the overdevelopment. So people have really dialed in on this overdevelopment. They really think that that's a problem. Do you see that as a county commissioner? Is that what you're hearing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the overdevelopment is causing the flooding issues. It's causing our environmental issues. People are having, like in Port St. John, people are having issues with the wild hogs coming into the neighborhoods and destroying their properties. And that's because they don't have anywhere to go. And unfortunately, there are no services out there to trap these animals. And so, you know, people don't have the money to hire trappers because some developer pushed out all the animals that were living on that land, and now they're destroying their property.
And it's going to only get worse if we continue to go down the pathway that we are going down. And so that's the Brevard News poll for this week. And we'll talk about next week's poll next time. Thanks for joining us. And that brings us to our kudos of the week. And our kudos for today would include two excellent candidates. We have the City of Cocoa Police Department. Kudos to you. And the reason we want to give kudos to the Cocoa Police Department is that they responded so favorably to the public records request, gave us everything that we asked for in a timely manner, unlike what has happened in Titusville. So we really appreciate it because we see the difference in how you've conducted yourself versus how Titusville is conducting themselves. And so kudos to you, City of Cocoa Police Department. We just love the fact of how you responded to our request. Also, kudos to Katie Delaney, our commissioner in District 1. She has taken oncoming fire because she is fighting for the citizens of North Brevard. She's fighting for the firefighters, which is also going to help North Brevard. Kudos to her. She's taken a lot of pushback, but she has worked tirelessly for the people of North Brevard, and a lot of people don't like it because she's doing exactly what people elected her to do. Kudos to you, Katie Delaney. And that brings us to my 2 cents. If you didn't get the memo before this week, the activities of the city of Titusville sends one clear message. The city dictators will do as they please. And I'm going to give you 3 exhibits to prove that. Exhibit A, the city of Titusville has raised taxes 8 of the last 9 years. Yet here they are on Tuesday consenting to a $30,000 plus vehicle for a propaganda officer and $40,000 for a raise for a temporary city manager. This was on top of spending for an outside counsel to deal with the email requests. There seems to be no desire, none whatsoever, to curb spending in Titusville. Exhibit B came on Wednesday when the Board of Adjustments threw a resident out of its meeting for holding up a sign, then rejected the Royal Oak neighborhood appeals process by deferring to the city council to act, who had already deferred to the Board of Adjustments to act. This is just, you say, what is going on here? Exhibit C. Threats are being made to silence the voices of those who are exposing corruption in Titusville by people in office in Titusville. What's become clear is that Titusville and the rest of Brevard County needs a cleansing. The majority of the people occupying office are not there to represent you, the people, but they're there to represent their own selves and the handlers that are responsible for putting them into office. 2026 will give you a great opportunity to change that. And that's my 2 cents.